lovelies, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Maria, and in today's video I'm going to be going through all the books I read in November, so my November reading wrap up. And I feel like I had a pretty good reading month in November. I read 11 books. I did have one DNF, which I will go through, and for the most part I stuck to my TBR. I didn't get to a few of the books, but I definitely stuck to the TBR a lot more than I have in some of my more recent months, so pretty proud about that. You'll see when I go through that most of these were fantasy. I'm definitely in my fantasy reading mood at the moment. Just this time of year, it's really what I reach for, but there was one little romance in there which we will go through. But yeah, basically just be going through all the books I read in November, giving you my opinions and my thoughts on them, giving you my ratings, whether I recommend them, and whether I think you should be adding them to your TBR. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into the wrap up. So as I say, for the most part I did read fantasy in November, but I did start off the month with a contemporary romance, which is If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia, and this one is one that you will have seen all around TikTok and Bookstagram. Not too sure if it's doing the rounds on BookTube, but I've seen it everywhere and a lot of people were really highly rating it, and I have to say I really enjoyed this one as well. I think if you like Gilmore Girls, small town romances, you'll probably like this one too. Definitely had a very cozy feel, and at the start of this we're following Michelle, who has recently lost her mother, and essentially she ends up going back to this small town that her mother and father have been living in to help run the inn that her mother had kind of bought in her later life. So she takes over this inn and she kind of feels like she's failing a little bit, and in comes her next door neighbour Cliff, I think his name is. Yes, Cliff, who is her total opposite. He's very outgoing, he's very kind of friendly, he's really beloved around the town, and we're kind of just watching their relationship grow. I think this one was definitely a slow burn. It was very cutesy. I really liked all the side characters. I think if you like Gilmore Girls, you're definitely going to like this one. You can definitely see where the inspiration came from. It was set in the 90s, so it was very nostalgic for me as well, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Ended up rating it, I think, 4 stars. It was a really cozy and comforting read, and yeah, overall highly recommend this one. Next up I read The Children of Gods and Fighting Men, and this is the first book in the Gale Song trilogy, and this is by a local author here called Shauna Lawless, and I've had my eye on this for quite a long time, and I'm so glad I finally picked this up because I absolutely loved it. So this is a historical fantasy. It's set in around medieval times in Ireland, and it's very much kind of following the political machinations of all kind of the high kings within Ireland at this time. Now, embroiled in this story as well, we do have some mythological elements with the Tuatha Dé Danann, which are kind of godlike beings in Irish mythology, as well as the Fomorians, which are again godlike beings, but they kind of have power for fire, I believe. Now, at the start of this story, the Tuatha Dé Danann think that all of the Fomorians have died, but we actually have 2 of them within this story, and they're kind of in hiding, not wanting to be discovered by the Tuatha Dé Danann. And one of the characters we're following is Gormla. Then we're also following a character from the Tuatha Dé Danann as well called Fola, and we're just following their stories along as they kind of embroil themselves within the political machinations of Ireland at this time. Gormla is very much kind of a morally grey character, and I absolutely loved watching her, whereas Fola is a lot more soft but quietly very powerful in terms of her influence, and it was just really interesting to see their contrasts in terms of their character depictions and their character development throughout the story. Both very strong women, but just in very different ways. And that's another thing I loved about this, was getting a kind of war story or kind of a political machination story from female POVs, as we do get a lot of these books are kind of dominated by the male side of things. So I really loved this one. I think the writing was beautiful. I think the mythological elements and the magical elements kind of interwoven within this story were done so well. It was a little bit slower paced. It is very character driven. It's definitely a setup book for the series, I would say, but I really loved our time with the characters, so ended up rating this one 4.5, and I can't wait to continue the series for this. Next up I read The Exorcism of Faeries by J.L. Fampa, and this is a dark academia. Again, it's set in the 90s in Ireland, and we're following our main character Ada, who is studying at Trinity University and kind of is down on her luck. She's trying to get money for her tuition, works at a mortuary to kind of build that money. She's worked at a mortuary her whole life. Her family business is in that side of things, and while she's in Dublin she's working at one to kind of pay her way through her college. We also have a professor within the college who is a professor of morbid autonomy, and their stories kind of intermingle together because there is this plague that's overcoming Ireland, and they end up having to reluctantly ally together to kind of figure out what's going on. And I think the main thing I really loved about this one was just the atmosphere and the vibes of this. I really loved how kind of the world was depicted in here. I definitely felt like I was walking around a rainy day in Dublin and around Trinity College when I was reading this one, so I think the author done a really good job of building that atmosphere in here. I also really loved the romance in here in terms of kind of how it was built, and it felt quite authentic. I think it was definitely a good slow burn and a good example of a slow burn, and that's exactly what I love. And I also love some of the side characters in here. I think even though we didn't get a lot of time with them, I feel that they were fully developed and they felt like a full part of the story. So overall I would say I really enjoyed this one. I think the the end of it was a little bit rushed and it felt like it was a bit anticlimactic for me, but I think there is going to be more stories within this world, so I'll be really interested to see where this one goes. But overall I really loved the writing. I think it was just the perfect amount of lyrical for the atmosphere that was being built here, and I think if you like dark academia and slow burn romance, this is definitely one to put in your TBR list. Next up is a book that I ended up DNFing, unfortunately, and it's In the Veins of the Drowning by Kaylee Cassidy, and I'd seen this on BookTok and Bookstagram and everyone was kind of raving about it, saying it was a really dark gothic fantasy, and for me that's everything I like. And unfortunately this one just didn't work for me. We've got our main character Imogen, who has been kept captive by this king for her entire life. She is a siren and she's been hiding her magic and that side of her for her entire life as well. One day a king from a neighbouring kind of almost enemy kingdom comes to the kingdom she's been living in, and a whole lot of activities happen and he ends up taking her away from this kingdom, and they have to reluctantly ally together to try and defeat a common monster, let's just say. And as I say, I did end up DNFing this one. I think I was around 44% into this, and a lot of it was just, I think, probably personal preference. I just really didn't like the main character in here. I felt like we weren't getting any world building at all. We were thrown into this kind of chaotic world that wasn't really explained. We were just supposed to accept that certain things were happening. There were characters in here who had history with each other that kind of contradicted why certain things might have happened in the past, and yeah, it just didn't work for me, unfortunately. I do think the writing was really beautiful and I probably would still read from this author again, but overall this just wasn't hitting for me and I kind of felt myself hate reading it a little bit, so decided to DNF this because I don't think it's fair to do that. If I know I'm not enjoying something, there's no point reading it just to give it a bad rating at the end. So yeah, sadly ended up DNFing this one. So next up I have Fallen City by Adrienne Young. This is a newer release and spoiler alert, I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Having read some of Adrienne Young's other literary fiction novels, I wasn't too sure how I would feel about a more fantasy leaning novel by her, but I'm really glad to say I ended up really loving this. So in this one we're in a world that is kind of on the brink of war. Essentially we've got a rebellion going on against the current kind of government that's in play here, and then we also have a forbidden love aspect between a soldier and a priestess, which kind of changes the trajectory of this war as well. And the main thing I loved about this one was that the tension and the danger was really palpable throughout this. You know, I think you read a lot of stories where you kind of feel like there's supposed to be these really high stakes and sometimes it doesn't hit. For this I kind of felt it the entire way through. I was anxious the entire way through reading this on what was going to happen. I just felt like something bad was going to happen the entire way through. So I think Adrienne Young done a really good job of kind of building that feeling of a city that was really brimming with this unrest and essentially waiting for war to break out. In this one we do jump back and forward between some of the timelines and sometimes that can be a bit jarring for me, but I really enjoyed it in here. I think it just helped add to that kind of unrest that we were feeling and just gave us the context that we needed to understand where we are within the story, because we are dropped right into it at the start. So yeah, just a heads up for anyone that maybe doesn't enjoy that. For me it's a bit hit and miss, but for this story I think it worked really well. And then in terms of the love story in here, I think the main word I would use to describe it is probably tragic. There's just so much yearning, there's so much angst, there's so much love between these two, even though we don't even get that much of their relationship on page. You can just feel it. Adrienne Young just has this way of transmuting that feeling to you through the pages, and yet again I think in this book she done it really well. And yeah, I just think overall this was a really lush and lyrical masterpiece of a book essentially. I think it was compulsively readable. I felt like it was quite a realistic take on how war impacts people. And the cliffhanger that we got on here is haunting my dreams at the minute. I need book 2 immediately. But yeah, overall not too much more to say about this one. Absolutely loved it and an absolute 5 stars. Next up I've got The Sacred Space Between by Kaylee Reid, and this one again I absolutely loved this. This is very atmospheric. If you like any kind of gothic romance stories, I think this is one that you'll really enjoy. In this one we're following an iconographer and a saint, and essentially they are part of this abbey who have been in power with this land for quite some time. Our iconographer is quite devout and she's obviously been praying to these saints for her entire life and has been brought up in this abbey. The saint that she's going to paint the icon of has actually been exiled from this abbey for some things that have happened in his past, but she's sent off to kind of paint his icon so that they can kind of keep his sainthood within this abbey, and the story goes from there. I just think this one was just so original, and as I say, the atmosphere that was built in here was really palpable. I really loved the setting. It was, if you kind of think of the moors, very misty, you know, crumbling cathedrals, that type of setting, that's exactly what we got here. I think the magic system that was in here again was very original. I really loved how it was depicted. And if you love again a romance as I do that has yearning and angst and kind of a will they won't they aspect, you definitely have that delivered in spades full in this book. The pacing was a little bit slow in the middle, and that's the only reason I ended up giving this one a 4 star, but I will say that the writing in here was absolutely beautiful. I definitely felt myself highlighting. I read the arc of this one and I was highlighting some of the quotes in here. I think her writing is absolutely beautiful, so I'll be really intrigued to read more from Kaylee Reid. And she actually lives local to me. She is American, but she lives locally to me. It's technically another local author on the TBR this this month and another one that I thoroughly enjoyed. So yeah, ended up giving this one 4 stars. Next up, I've got A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft, and this is the first Alison Saft that I've read. And in this one we were following kind of a ragtag group of people who have been sent on this quest by their king to find this mythical pool that will give him all the power he needs to kind of keep control of this kingdom, essentially. And kind of the main plot of this story as well covers 2 of the ragtag group who have been kind of academic rivals their entire lives, and they end up getting paired up on this expedition. And I'd say for the first 40% of this I was really immersed. I was really loving the atmosphere. It definitely has that kind of dark fairy tale gothic feel in here, and I think that was portrayed really well. However, somewhere along the way I think the momentum was really lost in here, and we were almost in the trenches of just having this folkloric atmosphere without really much substance for me personally. I just feel like we lost that kind of initial momentum in the story because there was a bit of a murder mystery and it just kind of fizzled out as the story went on. We had a lot of side characters that were, I think, supposed to really impact us in the story, and again I just don't think we got the depth from them to be able to have that impact that the author was intending. So in the end I think it felt a little bit flat for me, but I do think that the standout of this book was the world building, the writing style, and just kind of the atmosphere and vibes that I got from this. So definitely won't be giving up on Alison Saft. I'm sure there's another book out there that may not fall as flat for me. I really loved her writing, really loved her prose, and the first 40% of this, as I say, was probably stacking up to be more of a 4.5 star for me, but because of that loss of momentum in the second half falling a little bit flat, I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars. Then next up I had one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and that's Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber, and I have some very conflicting feelings about this one. So in this one we're following Holland, who at the start of this story is in this basically folklore class and is being taught about all this different folklore from old Hollywood. She never really knew whether to believe any of it, but there is this story about this watchman who essentially, if you call them, they'll be able to tell you when you're going to die. So she does this obviously, and she is told that she has 48 hours to live unless she finds this alchemical heart that is kind of this mythical thing that no one's ever been able to find. So she embarks on that journey to try and find that, and we just go on that journey along with her. And the initial thing I had with this is it's Stephanie Garber. I love her writing. I think the writing in here was gorgeous. It was very kind of dark fairy tale-esque. It did feel a little bit young for me considering this is an adult novel, but other than that, I still really enjoyed her writing, as I always have. And at the start, because it was kind of that dreamy, immersive kind of feeling, I was feeling really invested. But again with this, somewhere along the way, I think the middle bit kind of dragged with this, and it didn't feel like the story had that cohesion that I needed. I think there was supposed to be kind of a chaotic feel within here, but you still kind of need a cohesive string, maybe tying all of those chaotic things together. I just don't think we ever had that. I never felt grounded in this story, and it meant I was kind of detaching myself from the characters along the way. However, I will say there's parts of this book that when it clicks, it really clicks, and it was really impressive to me, and I really enjoyed the world that was built here. I just think that this is potentially a setup book for a series that's going to kind of delve into this world a bit more, because the whole way through this, the main thing I was thinking is I just want more. I want more from the characters, I want more from this world, and we just weren't getting it. So yeah, I think with this one, I did enjoy it. I think this one is more about the mood and the vibes than the plot, and in terms of the characters and stuff like that, I think if you love this one, it'll be more for the vibes than anything else. But still a 3.5 for me, still intrigued to read on in the series, but I just didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to. So yeah, ended up rating this one 3.5 stars. And then to continue my theme of kind of mid books, I did pick up Brimstone by Callie Hart. So this is the sequel to Quicksilver. Obviously I can't tell you too much about the synopsis of this book, but in Quicksilver we've got kind of this desert land where our main character Ceres has been living her entire life. They're kind of run by a tyrannical queen who kind of makes them work as much as possible, even just to get a glass of water. One day she ends up kind of going through this portal, going to the Fae lands, and she's embroiled in this kind of 100 years war, and we're just kind of following her story as that goes along. Quite cookie cutter when it comes to kind of the structure of a romantasy story, but I really loved book one. I surprisingly really loved book one. I just thought it was really fun. It gave me everything I needed from a romantasy, and I ended up rating it 5 stars. This one didn't quite give me the same feelings, and again I think it's a common theme with some of the books I've read recently where it just didn't have that momentum and cohesion that I would have wanted. I still really loved our kind of main characters. I do really like their dynamic. There's also a side character in here called Carrion Swift who, honestly, just give me a book about him and it would probably be 5 stars, because most of the stuff I loved in here was following his kind of storyline, and I kind of wish we got his POV. But yeah, I just feel like some of this was a bit repetitive, especially when it came to the romance. I think there was a lot of questions unanswered, or some storylines that were kind of fizzled out really conveniently, and it just didn't make sense considering the build-up we'd had to them. The ending of this was definitely a bit of a cliffhanger, and it has kept me intrigued. I think this is a trilogy, so I will probably read the last book, but yeah, I think this definitely suffered from middle book syndrome. I still really liked the writing. I still think it was kind of a solid romantasy, but just not that 5-star feeling that that I got from Quicksilver. So overall, just a bit of a mid book, and again, I ended up rating this one 3.5 stars. And then last up for the physical books I read The Will of the Many by James Islington, not sure how he pronounces his name, but I do have a vlog coming up for this one, so I'm not going to give you my in-depth thoughts and feelings, but this one is a bit of a dark academia / sci-fi fantasy novel. We're following a main character whose family was kind of killed by a enemy kingdom when he was very young. He's been kind of in hiding for his entire life and decides to infiltrate the enemy side to kind of seek his revenge. Now when he's in there, he's also placed within this academy by that enemy side to infiltrate kind of a separate faction within their side. A lot of political machinations, as you can tell. So he's almost infiltrating for the infiltration that he's already doing. And yeah, we're just following him along in this academy as he kind of learns the secrets and the hidden paths that there may be going on here. And I won't give you my in-depth thoughts and feelings, but let's just say I did really enjoy this one, and the vlog should be out in the next couple of weeks, so if you want to see what I thought about this one, definitely check that one out. And then on my Kindle, I did read The Primal of Blood and Bone by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So this is like the millionth book within this interconnected series. I think it's technically the 6th book within the From Blood and Ice series, but there is 4 books or 5 books within the kind of companion series. There's a lot of books. It's basically the last book that's come out. And this one, I was, for the first 60% of it, majorly disappointed, but the last 40% kind of brought it back to the series that I really love. So obviously, as this is like, as I say, the gazillionth book within this series, I can't tell you the plot of this one, but From Blood and Ice is a very solid romantasy. It is quite an intricate world building in terms of the world Jennifer L. Armentrout has built throughout all of these books, but at its core, I think it is a romantasy. We're kind of following a love story between 2 of the core characters here, and I think if you like anything with kind of a darker and vampiric romantasy with quite a deep world building in it, I think you'll really enjoy this one. Her writing can be a little bit convoluted. I think some of the books could benefit from having an editor, this one included. But overall, I've just really loved this story. I really love her characters, and you can obviously tell I've been invested in this series. I'm quite far into it now. So there's only 1 book left, which will be coming out next year, which I will be excited for, but this book was definitely a little bit disappointing. It was around, I think it's like 800, 900 pages or something like that. It should have been half of that. We didn't need all of the fluff that was in here. It was quite repetitive. We did have some characters that were acting quite out of character. That was explained at the end, but it was quite jarring throughout the story to have that after, you know, so many books. It kind of felt like it was a deviation from the story. And yeah, I just think overall it was too long, but as I say, after around the 60% mark, I think the book really got back into its stride again, and it was unputdownable. I was really intrigued. I was really intrigued by what our characters were doing and kind of where the story was going. We could have just had the last 40%, and maybe that first 60% could have been an extra 10%, you know, we didn't need all of that fluff. So yeah, I ended up rating this one 3 stars because essentially I didn't like half of it. Half of it was really me trudging through because I'm so invested in this series now, but that last half definitely brought it back, and I will read the last book. It's the last book that's coming out, hopefully, because the last few books are supposed to be the last books, but hopefully the next book coming out will be the last book, so I'll be really intrigued to see where it goes. But yeah, this one was a little bit of a disappointment for me, so ended up rating it 3 stars. And then lastly, I read A Forbidden Alchemy, and I done a buddy read of this one with my good friend Tiffany. And this one's by Stacey McEwen, and I believe she's a TikToker or something like that. I hadn't seen her on TikTok, I'd just seen that this was coming out, and I actually really enjoyed this one. A lot of people have kind of compared it to Peaky Blinders, but mix it with romantasy, and I definitely think you can see the elements of that in here. It was really good. We've got 2 characters that when they're 12, they're basically whisked off to this city as everyone is assessed to see if they have this kind of magical ability inherent to them. So they kind of have a little meet cute when they're 12 and younger when they're going for this assessment. And Nina has always wanted to be chosen, whereas Patrick, who is the male main character here, just wants to go home to his hometown. They kind of make a bit of a devastating discovery together, and it would kind of blow up this system if it got out. But as the story goes on, Nina gets her place within this academy and Patrick ends up going home as they wanted, and then we kind of jump to their future when their storylines may intermingle again. And I really loved this one. I think it was very dark and atmospheric, and it definitely had that slow burn element to it in terms of the romance that was in here. The world felt very grimy and alive, and it definitely had that feel of a place that kind of has elemental magic that meets the industry side of things. So almost if you think turn of the century type of feeling, that's kind of the feeling I got when I was reading this one. I really loved how the childhood connection between Nina and Patrick kind of wove into the later story within the book, and how it kind of gave them a bit of a deeper connection the whole way through. And I love that as the story developed, they both kind of became these morally grey characters that you might not have expected from the start of the story. And I'll definitely say there were a few twists in here that certainly got me. I didn't see them coming. So really loved that aspect of it. I think if I had one complaint, I think the early chapters, the pacing dips a little bit. We do need a good bit of build up for this world, but it did feel a little bit slow. So that would kind of be my one gripe about this one. But overall, I think it was a really dark and gritty story. It had emotional depth. It gripped me from kind of that 30% mark onwards. I think the world building was, if not unique, definitely very interesting. And I was really invested in our characters the entire way through. So yeah, I would say overall it's probably not a perfect book, but it was definitely very memorable. And to me, I ended up giving it 4 stars. So highly recommend if you're looking for a new romantasy. So yeah, that's everything. That's all the books that I read in November. As I say, I think I had a pretty good reading month. Most books that I read I did enjoy. Had a few books that were a little bit mid, but overall, other than that one DNF, I feel like I really enjoyed most of my reading this month, and I think I've got a few new firm favourites in there as well. Let me know if you've read any of these, what your thoughts and feelings were, or if they're on your TBR, and let me know what your favourite read was for November. Or if you don't have anything to comment, just put a little book emoji to let me know you got to the end. If you like this video, do remember to give it a like, and if you want to see more from me, remember to subscribe. I post 2 videos per week, and it's videos like this, so book shopping, reading vlogs, wrap-ups, all good bookish things like that. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye!